Hey patrons, thank you so much for all of the support. It is very much appreciated. And I am done. Okay, so I just finished up reading The Spider. This is book 2 from the fantasy trilogy Under the Northern Sky, and I have no idea why the series is called that, but it is. And this is by Leo Carew, and I want to give you my unedited thoughts upon finishing this book, which was just right now. So I really like this one, especially the second half of it. Unfortunately, the first half had some pretty critical problems for me plot-wise that I just can't justify giving a 5 out of 5 stars. So I'm giving this 4 out of 5 stars. I liked it. Just didn't love it. Still a wonderful series that I feel like is just like criminally underrated. I have no idea why this series is not more mainstream than it is in the fantasy community. It just feels like almost nobody's talking about it. I know some people are, but it's just not, it doesn't have the ratings, it doesn't have the reviews that I think that it deserves. And I just have this immense hope that this trilogy will close out in awesome fashion so that I can continue saying and recommending that this is a wonderful series for everybody to read. But I am disappointed. I'm always disappointed, I feel like, when I read the first book in a series that is awesome and the second book takes a step back. It's not what I want to see, especially from a new author that I don't have a ton of trust in yet. And this author just hasn't written a lot of books. I think these are the only 3 books that this author's written. Could be wrong. Probably wrong. I'm probably wrong about most things. You should just really never listen to me in general. But be that as it may, let's talk about the problems that I had with this book. And really, they're plot-oriented. There were 2 main problems. First, a major plot line of this book centers around a mystery surrounding a killer. Now, I've been on the record saying that I don't love mystery stories. Sometimes I do. In general, I don't. My problem here is not that there's a mystery. The problem is that in the prologue of this book, the book tells you who the killer is. And that it's different to do that, but it just ruins the suspense. Because for like a half of this book, not a half, like probably a quarter of this book involves a plot line there where we are dealing with trying to solve this mystery, but the reader has already solved it. And it's like, it's not fun to see characters trying to put pieces together when we've already put them together ourselves. It feels like, have you ever read a book where you've solved the twist? You know that you solved the twist. You've put it together. You had that aha moment. And it's cool to have that moment. But then it's like, now we have to just go along and act like nobody knows what's going on when clearly I do. And that's what happened here. And there was a while here where I was like, this book sucks. And I don't know what happened. And I guess this is what we're doing now. And so that's not really fortunate. Now, the second problem I had is that the book spends a good portion in the first half dealing with this killer storyline with side characters at the forefront that felt like a distraction from the main plot. Even as we got the conclusion of this plot and we understood where it went, it didn't feel super needed for the story. It's like the author said, we've got a main story going here, and I don't have enough to write. So we're going to put some filler in here. Now, maybe it ties in better in the third book. I don't suspect that it does. But that's what it is. I'm probably wrong. The author probably said, no, this is critical. This is the story I want to tell. I'm trying to tell this bigger, grander scope here. But it just felt like there's other things that could have been told. If the author wanted to pad this story with more, we could have heard more from the main city going on here. There could have been internal strife going on. There was an awesome sequence involving some, really the only real fantasy elements of the story. There's some more than that, but in general, there's not a lot. This feels more like a just general fantasy fiction-y type story without a lot of fantasy elements. But there are these kind of giant creatures that the main group is trying to recruit to their side to fight against the other side. And I love that plotline. It was really fun. Too short. I wanted more. There was a few chapters dedicated to it, but we solved that problem and we moved on. And I just wanted more. And, why not tell more about them? Go in that direction. Why don't we go and tell more stories from the other side of this conflict? because we did get some stories from that conflict. But again, not enough. I wanted more. And in general, I look at this book and I go, this book, maybe more than any other book that I've ever read, has a lot of the Song of Ice and Fire vibes. Now, I get that probably a lot of people say this about a lot of things. It's a huge popular book, and it's easy to compare a lot of books to A Song of Ice and Fire. I don't generally say that about Ice and Fire. I feel like it's its own thing. This one just felt like it had a lot of the same kind of elements. It's very different, but it's just kind of the themes of it, the multi-POV story, kind of the world itself, had a lot of similarities. Not even close to being a ripoff. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. But it felt like if you like A Song of Ice and Fire, you're probably going to enjoy this one as well. I guess now that I think about it, I kind of feel like the same thing about the John Gwynne books, Faithful and the Fallen and Of Blood and Bone. I would say the same kind of thing about them, is that if you like this, it's different, but you're probably going to like this as well. But the thing that A Song of Ice and Fire had going for it, or one of the many things, is that it felt like in the first story, these main characters, but then it introduced more characters, and then it made them kind of the main characters. And eventually it's really splitting off and telling these different tales. And I wanted more of that. I wanted more time dedicated to these other stories, and I just didn't quite get it here. So let's talk more about the fantasy elements here, because there's not a ton of them. I mean, we have these two different races here. You've got the northern people. In general, the story is about the conflict between the North and the South. Two totally different peoples. The people in the North are bigger, stronger, and the people in the South have to be, they live a more rural lifestyle, and they're just smaller in stature. You've got these kind of giants that are their own kind of third different group that's kind of disconnected from this main conflict, even though they try to get pulled into it. But that's really it there. And so there's not a lot going for it from the fantasy elements side. What really is going for this book is the world building. I love it. It just entranced me. It brought me there. I couldn't get enough of it. The characters themselves I thought were great. A new POV character gets introduced here. The name of this book, The Spider, is, I don't want to say more than that, but it involves a character who is the queen of the enemy country. I loved it. I loved this character. And I just wanted so badly more of this character. I wanted more of the backstory of this character. I wanted more POV chapters involving this character. I loved it. And it just... So I realized that I'm saying a lot of negative things, and I rated this book a 4 out of 5. Because I really did like a lot, but I just felt like there was a lot of missing that could have made this book great. And... because, there's so many things going for it that just felt like it could have been there. Because the second half of this book, eventually we get back to that main conflict between the North and the South. And that's when the book really shines. That's when I'm like, this is awesome. That's a 5 out of 5. I loved it. But the rest of it, 3 out of 5, which is where I'm settling on my 4 out of 5 score. But I love this conflict. I love the enemy general, who is just like this super smart spy master that finds himself, the one hope that this country has to be able to survive this massive onslaught from the main group. I love the main character of the main group. I love the trials and the tribulations he has to go through to be able to, end up where he is. It's a fun read. I had a lot of fun reading this. But yeah, just a lot that it could have been. And I don't know why I know why, but I don't know why the author chose to make the decisions that he did that ended up holding this book a little back. So at the end of the day, do I recommend this series to people? Heck yeah. The series is awesome. The first book especially. And let's just hold out hope that this third book is going to bring back what that first book had. I suspect that it will. Because we've dealt with that little side plot line. We're back to the main story. It's very clear, at least to me, where this final story is going to go, what needs to happen, what pieces need to be put in place in order for us to finish out this story. I don't know how it will finish, but I know, where we're going in general, if that makes sense. So I touched on it a little bit before. I think that if you like A Song of Ice and Fire, that you'll probably enjoy this. It's got the same kind of political elements to it. It's got a lot of fun battle sequences. It's got these multi-POV characters that are really enjoyable. It's not as dark. It definitely doesn't have any sort of vein of the grimdark things. I wouldn't say A Song of Ice and Fire is grimdark, but it certainly has some of those themes to it. But it doesn't have that. It's not as brutal. You're not going to see these horrific moments happen. I mean, quite frankly, you're not going to see these huge revelations that happen. There's some. But you're not going to see these moments where you're like, oh man, George R. R. Martin really just set the stage and he knocked it out of the park later on. Not quite what happens. We just get a fun story. And sometimes that's what I want. That's what I want. And in general, that's what I got here. So I'm going to finish off there. A lot of promise here. Can't wait to read the third one. And I look forward to reviewing it sometime in the next couple months. So thank you so much for watching this. And as always, happy reading to you. Want to give another shout out to all of my patrons. With a special shout out to my Ascendant tier and Librarian tier patrons. Anna G, Brian, CJ, Darren, Jonathan, My Book is Lit, Miranda's Bookshelf, Nathan T, Nev's Book Channel, Ron Reich, Russell, Ryan L, Tahir, Anna, Andra, Angelo, Ben, Blair, Brock, Evan, Harry B, Jamie, Joe, Maria, Michael Sugarman, Sky, TW57, Wacky, and Zion.